DC is now getting into the streaming series business and they have just launched Peacemaker on HBO Max. So today I'm giving you my spoiler review for the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker. We follow Peacemaker after he recovers from the injury suffered during the Suicide Squad, as he is forced to join the mysterious Black Ops A.R.G.U.S team, Project Butterfly. They are tasked with identifying and eliminating parasitic, butterfly-like creatures that live in the United States and all around the world. Now, before I properly start with my review for Peacemaker, I want to know your thoughts on it. Did you check out these 3 episodes? What did you feel about it and how do you rank them? Anything and everything down there in the comments below. And if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. Last warning before I properly get started, this will have spoilers for all 3 episodes. I don't exactly have a structure, I just like to talk out of my ass. So I will touch on stuff that you probably don't want to know if you haven't seen the episode. So that's just a warning for you. And given that I'm just talking about these first 3 episodes, there's not exactly a structure. I'm just going to talk about a few of the things that I liked, my experience coming into this show, and my one big issue with the show thus far. Because Peacemaker is not something that I am absolutely in love with, that this is A+ material. We still have an entire season to go, so I'm not thinking about grades thus far. As far as the humor of this goes, this is very much up my alley. It makes fun of the violence while it is very violent. The humor, it's crass and irreverent and outrageously offensive and politically incorrect, and I kind of love shows that use that type of humor, that very dark, morbid, very off-kilter type of humor, and I really love what the show is doing with that humor. That opening credit scene right away, that opening credit scene, if you don't enjoy that, if you don't find that funny, I don't think you will find the show funny. That opening credit scene is fucking hilarious. But it's a great representation of what the show is. And I think it's very much dividing the lines on whether people enjoy the show or find the show funny or not. And I find that opening credit scene very, very funny. I think it's hilarious. It's so off-putting. It's so random. It's so off-kilter. It just really works for the tone that this show is trying to balance. And James Gunn continues to use this kind of violence, this kind of humor, but have a very character-centric story at its core about these very damaged characters. These characters that are dealing, each one of them, with their own insecurities and their own dark inner demons. And I find that very compelling. John Cena, first and foremost, he is playing this role to a T. He is having clearly so much fun along with everyone else. And having grown up watching John Cena in the WWE as this hero, this very PG kind of character that is there for all the kids to be inspired by him. And now he's playing this very narcissistic, completely oblivious pacifist that uses violence to reach that peace. I think it's so much fun to watch him. Peacemaker in this is like if Michael Scott took steroids and didn't have the best upbringing, if you know what I mean. And if you've seen the show, you've seen the White Dragon, Robert Patrick, just awesome to see him back as well. Their whole dynamic, the fact that he doesn't approve of what his son is doing and all that, I think really works to make us sympathize with this guy that is so oblivious about his faults and his shortcomings. It lends to the hilarity of the entire show. And then the team that is with him. Murph, for one, is so far a very intriguing character. There's a lot of mystery surround him. We don't exactly know a lot about him, but having him be in that position of power is exactly what makes him intriguing. Like, he's using this team for good things, for bad things. He badmouths Amanda Waller all the time. but is he actually working for her? Then, speaking of Amanda Waller, we got her daughter, which is a reveal that comes in episode 2 that I saw coming right away, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think that adds a lot of tension and a lot of interesting dynamics to the show. The fact that she needs this job to make do, which is a compelling reason to put her in this situation, but now it creates this friction between her and the rest of the team. Harcourt, played by Jennifer Holland, is a show stealer as well. If not for Peacemaker, if I had to choose another character that I think is stealing the show thus far, it's her. And the more we dive into her character, the more I'm liking her, the more I'm finding her very compelling and a very tragic character. And I like how she mirrors Peacemaker in the sense that she's angry at the world and at everyone else, but then she's kind of angry at herself in reality. And all these dynamics are so interesting thus far because there's a veil, a hidden veil of drama underneath all the humor that, again, it's so politically incorrect when Adebayo gets the picture in the 3rd episode. And John Cena and Peacemaker starts talking about how he's an ally and he has 400 gigs of alliance in his hard drive. I'm crying with so many of the lines in this show. And that's just a comedy. Then we got the violence and the action. And the action thus far, it's just so incredibly over the top. It fits right at home with the rest of this show. The entire 2nd episode of him trying to escape that building where he got in a fight with the other girl that he just had sex with. And it's just so wild how these 3 episodes from one to the next just move so differently. Where the first one really does a great job at laying the groundwork of the character dynamics and of the premise of the butterflies and whatnot, but they're keeping Peacemaker at bay. And then the 2nd episode is just a prison break, so to speak, where he just went through this very traumatic experience where he banged this girl and then she tried to kill him to the sound of a great rock ballad, and I need to get to the soundtrack in a bit. But then, on the 3rd episode, we're already on a mission. And the mission fails, and then we have the added dynamic of Vigilante, who is a great companion to Peacemaker, and the way they bounce off one another, as Vigilante is trying to get this kind of approval from Peacemaker to be his sidekick, but he's also so oblivious at how ridiculous it is. And the show does a great job at positioning these characters as the superheroes, but then it has these normal people with Murr and Harcourt and Economus, who's also really funny when he takes down Judo Master and then starts dancing around the body. And then it presents the perspective of these normal, regular people and how they see these, not super powered in the case of Vigilante and Peacemaker, but these guys that believe they're superheroes with all these ridiculous costumes and masks. And we have the human perspective that we would have in this world. And I find that really interesting. And again, just plays with that humor and that seriousness really, really well. Now, I said I needed to talk about the soundtrack because every action scene in this is accompanied by a great song. If you are ever curious about what is my musical taste, it's this. 80s hard rock, glam metal, rock ballads. This soundtrack is excellent. From the opening credits sequence to just every time a rock song comes into the soundtrack and just perfectly fits the scene. When Harcourt is talking to Peacemaker as they're getting ready to shoot at any moment, that family of butterflies living in the mansion, the rock ballad playing on the background of that really fits the scene and the moment. When they're heading there in the 3rd episode as well, the Murder Train, I believe that's the name of the song. It's something Train. I'm not remembering all the songs. The I Don't Love You Anymore, when he's fighting the girl trying to stab him in the 1st episode. Just all great music that I really appreciate and speaks to me personally. So if you don't like that genre of music, it's a completely different experience for you, obviously. But this show just knows exactly what it is, it knows exactly what it's doing, and it's 1,000,000% committing to it. But that is why I think it's also throwing a lot of people off. Because it's so committing to this one thing, if you don't appreciate that kind of storytelling, that kind of humor, that kind of violence, that kind of tone, I think the show, very justifiably so, throws you off and puts you off from it. But it just shows that this is James Gunn with no restriction. It kind of reminds me on when we drew the lines between Guardians 1 and Guardians 2, where for a lot of people who love that first Guardians threw them very off. I have quite a few friends that felt that way. But I personally love Guardians 2 more than the first one, because the humor and how it balances and how it nuances between serious and dramatic, and the humor and the violence and the irreverence, it's much more refined to my personal tastes. And so I very much relate the kind of humor and the kind of thing that Peacemaker is doing to what Guardians 2 did after the first one. I will also say that visually, obviously in terms of tone as well, but visually this show looks very much like the Suicide Squad. It's not hard to buy at all that this comes right after that, and it's set in the same universe and same world, and even when it comes to the time frame of it, like immediately after that film, it just looks like we stepped out of the Suicide Squad and immediately were thrown into Peacemaker. So the visual dynamic of the show, they did a great job at transporting the identity of the Suicide Squad into this show. My big problem, however, because we talked about identity and dynamic from the Suicide Squad, we need to talk about my biggest issue with this show thus far, and that is Peacemaker himself. As I said, I think John Cena is playing this role brilliantly, and he's having the time of his life. This is a character I really enjoy seeing on screen, and I find him completely stupid, but humorous and likable, and I feel sympathy for him, and I feel pity for him. But I don't buy this as the same character we saw in that film whatsoever. Again, this is a character I like very much, and I don't mind this interpretation of Peacemaker. But it's just very difficult for me to buy that this is the same guy we saw in that film. And there isn't really a proper evolution from the guy we saw in that film into this guy. We're not eased into this. Just from the opening moments of episode 1, he's just this completely different guy. The way he talks and acts around his father, the way he acts and talks and walks around this new Project Butterfly team of his, it's totally not the same guy. The fact that he has a fucking pet eagle, which is awesome. I love Eagly. I love his relationship with Eagly. But just in the context of me having to buy this guy as the guy from the Suicide Squad that tried to kill Ratcatcher, I don't believe this is the same guy. And that is the biggest thing that is kind of throwing me off in this show. Because it would be one thing for this show to come out and say, we have the same actor, but as if it was a variant. If this was like a variant of Peacemaker, this issue goes completely away. Because it's just easy to watch this guy, John Cena playing him, the tone of the show, all that. But it's very hard to buy him as that same exact person. Maybe I'm making a storm in a glass of water. Maybe I'm making too much of a big deal out of this. But to me, given it's the lead character of a show that's coming right off of that experience, of that story in the Suicide Squad, for me it kind of gets in the way at points. But that is really my biggest issue. I will say that regarding the first 3 episodes, the first episode is the best out of them all. Then episode 2, then episode 3. I think episode 3 ends in kind of this dud, but continues to progress the story where every single episode ends, and it's completely different from the last one, and the status quo completely changes. So from the character dynamics, from the humor, the performances, and the banging soundtrack, Peacemaker is a refreshing surprise. I tweeted this a few days ago. But if you told me coming into the show how excited I was for Boba Fett, how excited I was for Peacemaker, that Peacemaker would absolutely blow the Book of Boba Fett out of the water, I would have called you a liar. But here we are, and this is one of the most refreshing shows I have seen in a while, from its unique identity, its unique sense of humor, and the way it just treats violence in such a fun way. Every time you see a splatter of blood, it's like glitter. And watching this show, it's like being at a party with your wildest friends. So Peacemaker right now is really surprising me. And so those are my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker. Let me know your thoughts on it down there in the comments below. Start the conversation and let me know if you want to see weekly reviews for episodes of Peacemaker. And of course, if you like movies and TV, you like what you saw here, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members Brunette and Stuart for making this video possible. And until the next one, love each other and love the movies.